Well, let me just say I'm really pleased to be here and to see you all you folks, and I hope we get the people who are on Zoom to, I don't know whether they can hear me or not, but in any event, it's good to be here. Um, and I've been involved with a lot of different things in my life. So, but this was something that goes back a long ways, and I think it's kind of neat. What I'd like to do this morning is to talk about the first is why marriage encounter exists. What is the need for it? Why do we have it? Why did it come into being? And what was the driving force that caused it to be created? And then to talk about the history, where it started, how it came to this country, and what has happened, how it has evolved, and then talk about the organizations that support it and that do it, carry it out, and then talk about the program. So those are the things I want to cover this morning, and I hope you can bear with me and not fall asleep too soon. What is the need for marriage encounter? Well, it started off with the idea that there isn't any real organization out there that supports marriage. We have organizations that support almost everything that we want to do, but once you get married, you're kind of on your own. You've got to figure it out, and that's fine. But the churches have I've belonged to probably half a dozen different churches in my life, and many of them have groups of couples groups, young married groups, and they're nice social organizations. There's lots of social organizations, but they don't really support marriage as a institution. It's they're nice. You're nice to make friends and to have a social relationship, but to make the marriage a success, how do you do it? And so that was part of the driving force. And then there was I think, a trend in our culture, and I've seen it grow, and it's still out there, but it certainly was going on back in the 1960s when marriage encounter got started. And the divorce rates, which were published, and we would see these things, and it was turning out that the number of marriages that were failing and ending in divorce was going up. It became a fairly substantial fraction. We thought that was not necessarily good, but there was a trend. I think you hear it a lot about somebody's, they're come from a single parent family, and the press seems to lionize that situation. It's difficult for single parents to raise families, but it's also difficult for married couples to raise families, and this is something that we recognize, but it's not worth making a big deal out of. Then there was the welfare program that decided that married couples shouldn't be on welfare, or if they are on welfare, we're not going to give them as much money because they have two people who should be making money, and so we won't provide the support for families that had two a married couple in them. So that has happened. It happens in Pennsylvania. It happens all over the country. So whether that's a good thing or not, I'm not sure, but it certainly doesn't encourage families to grow and prosper. And the tax system used to be that married couples got a substantial tax break, and there seems to be a move afoot to minimize that, to reduce it. The people, single people say, why should a married couple get a tax break that I can't get? So that is going on as well, and that tends to minimize the benefits of marriage. Is that a big thing? No, it's not a big thing, but it's out there. Uh, I think a bigger problem is substance abuse. It used to be that alcoholism was a big problem, and now we have things like fentanyl and cocaine and heroin, and it used to be that these were really hard to get a hold of. Now it's out there, but the effect of these things is to really destroy families. That you find the homeless people that are around, many of them have substance abuse problems. It could be marijuana, it could be fentanyl, it could be anything. But that seems to be a big problem. It causes families to break up, and you know we see these things going on. There's another thing that you hear about the making the you know, the women's movement. Uh, this group certainly it's a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing as far as maintaining and encouraging families and marriages to do well. So with that in mind, the Christian family movement started in the 1960s as a result of the Vatican II council in Rome. And as a result of that, there was a group in Barcelona, Spain, got together and said, you know, we're married couples and we don't know what we're doing. We don't know how to make our family, our marriage fit into the church and support it and have the church support us. So they went to the priest, one of their priests, a fellow by the name of Gabriel Calvo, and they said, you know, this is a problem. What should we do? How can we support marriage? What can we do to create something that will support our marriage relationship that doesn't exist? And Calvo said, look, I'm a priest. I don't know anything about marriage. I don't really want to know about marriage. Why do you come to me? Well, he worked with the group ultimately, and they created this program called Marriage Encounter. And it was very successful in Barcelona, and the church picked it up, and it came to this country as part of that Christian family movement. They were having meetings and sponsored the Marriage Encounter, people from Barcelona. And when it came to this country, they said, this is really kind of a neat thing, a good thing. And they did it in connection with the Catholic Church. The New York Diocese supported it, and they got priests involved, and they got the couples involved, and it grew. It grew like wildfire. It grew and spread all over the country. It was open to everyone. So not only in the Catholic Church, but other couples, including many Protestants and Jewish couples, went to through these marriage encounter programs and got interested in it and decided to support it. So it really went even far beyond what they had envisioned. So what happened, like any successful movement, as it grows and more people get involved, you get divisions. People, when you get enough people, you're gonna have some ideas that cause the group basically to come apart. And as a result, it's split into two different organizations that are out there. One is the Worldwide Marriage Encounter. That's organized by faith. So there's a Catholic, there's a Protestant. It's not Protestant. There's an Episcopal, there's a Presbyterian, there's a Lutheran, so on and so Baptist, so on. And that was their hope. They wanted each one of these faiths to pick it up and carry it on and do their own thing. They had a restrictive leadership concept that if you were in that particular faith group, you could be a member, you could be a team couple, you could be a leader. But if you weren't a member of that faith group, you couldn't. You were restricted. That was a restriction they had that you could not participate in the organization. You could go to the weekends and get what you could out of it, but you couldn't be in the leadership. So National Marriage Encounter said, now wait a minute, we don't want that. We don't think that's right. So we're going to say our group is open to anyone. And what they did is organized by region. So the National Marriage Encounter is a North Atlantic region, which includes Pennsylvania, New England, New York, and down as far as Virginia. But we had a California group. We had a big group in the Midwest and in the Southwest. So and we even included Hawaii. So each region has an overall regional structure, which has meetings on a regular basis and supports the local organizations in the local communities in that area. And Linda and I, although we started off certainly interacting with the worldwide folks, ultimately we ended up in the national organization. So we attended our first weekend on June 30th, 1974. That was sponsored by Long Island Marriage Encounter. And we did a follow-up weekend the following year. And then we moved from Connecticut. We were living in Hamden, Connecticut at that time. I took a job up in Allentown at that time, and we moved to the Allentown area. And we got active in the group there. It was a worldwide group, but by then the split had materialized, and there were two organizations, and we decided to form a National Marriage Encounter group in Lehigh Valley area, the Lehigh Valley section, and that includes Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton, and Reading. And we had couples from all of those communities who joined together and formed the Lehigh Valley Marriage Encounter. And we became part of the North Atlantic section of Marriage Encounter. And ultimately, Linda and I became leaders of that North Atlantic, of the Allentown, Lehigh Valley section of Marriage Encounter, and then ultimately the North Atlantic region. We served 2 terms on the National Board of Trustees. You'll see the plaque we got as a consequence of doing that. So I tell people I've done everything in Marriage Encounter. We were team couples, we were leaders, we did practically anything you could do. Several other groups came out of that. One was Retorno, which is also a weekend program, largely based on Marriage Encounter, but with the emphasis on prayer. And it was basically a prayer weekend where the weekend program consists of a Friday evening, Saturday, and Sunday. There's a total of 13 presentations. 2 are going to be given Friday night, 8 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday. The presenters are three teen couples and a faith leader. This program started with priests as the faith leaders. Uh, as we broadened and expanded out, we got ministers and even nuns and monks to handle that. It's one of those things that you want to do a weekend. You got the teen couple signed up for the weekend. You got to find somebody, a faith leader, to do it. And it gets to the point you take anybody you can get. And usually the people we had were very much committed to it and really helped a lot. Okay. Each presentation during the weekend is done by the teen couple. And faith leader participates in every presentation. So the group activities, there is a Saturday evening sharing service. And at that point, the couples during the weekend have a chance to interact, to make comments or talk to the group. But it's the only time, that's the only time on Saturday that they have a chance to talk to the group. And then on Sunday, we have a closing service, and there's another opportunity at that time. Usually, if there's a priest on the weekend, we'll have a mass, because many of the Catholic couples have to do mass during either Saturday or Sunday. So it gives them that opportunity to do it locally in our group, so they don't have to go out. Okay, the course structure. Basically, we have a talk on usually Sunday afternoon where we call it the Sermon on the Amount. And we explain that the course involves the meals that they get. They have, I don't know, 5 meals, 3 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. Lodging, minor expenses, team expenses, voluntary. It's a voluntary contribution. And basically, we tell the couples, your weekend is paid for. We ask you if you want to, if you think this is valuable and important, you can pay for another couple's weekend. And that's the basis. If they don't want to pay, they don't have to pay. We never had a real problem with that, but anyway. Some of the topics covered. Okay, this what we're talking about here is the first real concept that is presented is that marriage, when people get married, they go through what we call a romance or illusion stage, and then there's a disillusion stage, and then if you get past that, you get to a stage which we call joy, and that's pretty much self-explanatory. But to understand and realize that this is not something that just happens to some. This is universal, and a lot of people don't really associate with it. But to learn that is important. And one of the consequences that we stress is that love is not a feeling. People say, I love to do this. That's not, I mean, what they're saying is that they really like to do it. And they have the extreme of like is love. No, it isn't. Love is a decision. You make a decision to love. It isn't a feeling you have. It is a decision that you make. What does love mean? What does that? Well, we talk about that a lot. And, it's things like respect. Respect is important, and sharing your feelings and sharing and listening to your spouse's feelings and accepting the situation. you may not like it, but the decision to love is to make that decision to do that, to go through the process of understanding and respecting and, uh, and basically um, it's really an embrace. Let me go back. I'm not sure I covered everything. Yeah. No, that's not what.
There you go. 10 and 10.
Am I going back? Trying to go backwards. That's the one, isn't it? There, I got it. There it is. One more.
Hospitals did
We
that one.
talked about that.
The next slide is that one.
Okay,
That's the one you missed.
that's what I
Yeah.
missed.
There.
Okay.
Okay, you did that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, let's do that one. That's the one I missed.
That one.
Operating procedure.
Yeah.
Each presentation is read by the couple. Now, this is a problem for some people. We read the presentation because we don't want to ad lib. We want the presentation to say exactly what it says. And that way, when we're putting the presentations together, the team couples all hear each presentation and they comment on it, and we evolve it so that everybody is in agreement with what it says. And that way the faith leader also hears the presentation as we're developing it and can make comments and understand going into the presentation what is going to happen, how it's done. It makes it a little bit difficult when you're reading things. You don't have the spontaneity that you would get from an ad lib presentation, but it's good because it's everybody on the same page. We all understand what was planned and how it is done. So that's somewhat unusual. The faith leader comments, we don't, as the team couples don't interact with that very much. The faith leader, he can do whatever he or she wants, and we find that that's good. We don't want to put that person into a box. He or she can do whatever he wants, and that they give them that responsibility, and we've never had a problem. The presentation is followed by questions. These are questions developed by the team couples that are given to the couples making the weekend. And they're in the form of, tell me your feelings about whatever the subject is. And you end up, usually there's a song, some music that is played to give the couples a few minutes to reflect on what has happened, what the presentation was, and that's up to each team couple. We talk about that, and each team couple decides what they want to do as far as music. If they want to have music, then the original teams from the 1960s had a thing for the play Man in La Mancha, and they used a lot of the music from that Broadway show. But as we evolved, we moved away from that, and so we got a whole bunch of different songs that are played. A lot of times would hand out the words. So some of these songs you don't necessarily understand every word, but if you have them written in front of you, you can see it, and it makes it more understandable. And then the couples separate and write a reflection. They actually write down the answer to the question, what it is in the form of a love letter to your spouse. And then after that time, there's a specific time for that. The couples get together and they dialogue. And the dialogue procedure consists of reading the love letters from your spouse, and then you comment, discuss it, to talk about it, what your feelings are, how you react to the love letter that you've received, and they do that sequentially, and then get back together for the next presentation. That's the program. There's 13 presentations during the weekend, and okay. The reflections are written alone. Reflection is written as a love letter. The letter should stress feelings. The point is made, and this is made right at the very beginning, that feelings are neither right nor wrong. They just are. And you share them because they are your reaction to the question that's presented. And if you understand the feelings, that brings you together. There's a together. You may not agree with it, but at least you understand that, and that understanding gives you a way of coming together. So during the dialogue, you don't condemn feelings. And one thing, we emphasize, don't ever say, you shouldn't feel that way. That's wrong. You do feel that way. There's nothing wrong with feeling that way. Okay? So that's an expression that we often hear, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. And we say that if you say that, you're wrong. That's a mistake. Do not say that. That's not ever going to happen. Sharing feelings is essential to the process. As I said, if you share the feelings, then you have an understanding. You have an understanding of what your spouse, or who your spouse is. That you're so involved with your feelings, you may not recognize that, but it's true. Feelings are neither right nor wrong. As I said, they exist. They are there. They are who you are. It's not necessary to have similar feelings on the same subject. And we respect that. We understand that. That's part of the process. It's necessary. But it is the case. And feelings can change, but you should not try and change your spouse's feelings. You can say, I don't agree with them. I don't feel that way, but they are, I accept that you have them, and that's who you are. Okay, this is where I was before. One of the things we cover is the experience that many couples have. Practically everyone has. When you get married, you go through what we call a romance or illusion phase where your spouse can do no wrong and everything is wonderful. And then you go through a disillusion phase where it's just the opposite, and everything your spouse does is wrong and you can't stand it. And you have to get past that. And once you get past that, this is normal. And everybody experiences it. And realizing that just makes things better. That you come to a sense of knowledge, and you get from that knowledge, you experience what we call joy, because you accept the situation and you live with it and you work with it and you make it part of your existence. There's one talk we do on the Jesus' parable. This parable is in all three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. The parable of the sower, where Jesus talks about the sower who puts seed out, and some of it falls on the rocks, and some of it falls on the path, and the birds get some of it, and some of it gets into the weeds, and the weeds grow up and choke out the, uh, the, the, the plant that's growing, and some of it falls on good soil and becomes very fruitful and produces 10 or 100 times as much rain as fell on the good soil. So that parable is in all three gospels. We tend to read the Matthew version, and that's part of the process. The initial one of the presentations is on that parable. And it was interesting because the Jewish couples, when we got Jewish couples as leaders and team couples, they found Old Testament scriptures that were similar, and they'd use the Old Testament scriptures, and that's fine. The idea is out there. It's part of the learning process, and we encourage it. How did that happen?
No. Yeah. No.
Since the move.
So, Sheldon, how many years does the disillusion phase of marriage last?
Pardon?
How many years does the disillusion phase last?
A lot of years.
It depends. There isn't any set number. It is a growth process. Some people grow faster than others. I mean, that's the truth.
Yeah.
Some people never get past disillusionment. I mean, honest to God. And some people get through it very quickly. But it always happens, one way or the other.
Sure. So
You're gonna go backwards?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I want to be.
So expand on the parables. I'm interested in the parables. Because so how is this related to marriage? Seeds, is it?
It's a way to look at yourself.
I see.
And you share the parable as, you know, what kind of soil am I? And this depends on the subject, on what you're talking about. But that's one of the things we talk about.
So you're helping the people inside a marriage understand their spiritual potential.
Absolutely, that's exactly what we're trying to do. Yes, right. And this is a step in the process. I mean, there are many steps, but this is one of them, and this is one we talk about. You know, as I was saying, love is a decision. It's not a feeling, and you go through that process of realizing that when you love somebody, it's not whether you like them. You may agree with them, disagree with them. It doesn't matter. You have to make the decision to love.
But Sheldon, I think the soil, the parable of the soil, those 4 different types of soil, at least in my situation, I think I'm different types of soil depending what influences are going on in my life at that time.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And your experience, you know, the way you react to that will depend on the circumstances.
That's the important point, how you react to that time.
Yep. And you know, and as I say, organizations never talk about this stuff. At least I'm not aware of it. I mean, we hear sermons on occasion. Leah has done a sermon on the parable of the sower, and I've heard it, and you know, I said, gee, that's what we teach in marriage academy. But it's one thing to hear a talk about it. It's something else to actually write down on a piece of paper, on a notebook, and and say what your reaction to that is. How do you feel about it? What are your feelings? And share that with your spouse and get her reaction or his reaction. So anyway, that's part of the process. And what I'm trying to do is to make that clear so that you understand what's going on and how this experience, the marriage encounter weekend, is a real growth experience for the marriage. Hey, Dave.
So I really think that's important. I mean, 1 Corinthians 13 tells us what love is.
Yep. We talk about that. That's in there.
Yeah, right. And it's not a feeling. And I go over these things in my when I'm having a hard time sleeping. And okay, there's 6 things I didn't do today that probably are important, that I can work on. So it's patience, kind, selfless.
Yeah, we cover all of that. And incidentally, the other thing I wanted to mention is the wedding in Cana. This is it's talked about in John's gospel. The point is this was Jesus' first miracle, turning water to wine. And we like to talk about the experience of marriage as, when you're doing this, when you're going through this growth process, you're really turning the water of your life experience into something special, like the wine at Cana. And that's part of that whole growth process that is going on, that we try and create and cause as part of the weekend. Now, if I can make this thing work. No, that's backwards. Great dialogue. The culmination of the weekend is an hour and a half love letter on what we call the great dialogue, which is a question of why do I want to go on living, and why do I want to go on living with you? These are the questions that you write an answer to, and then you have the dialogue on that. That's kind of, at that point you've done it almost everything. So anyway, it's a 3-hour session. That's the climax of the weekend. That was usually Sunday morning. And we talk about the gifts of the Spirit. Again, Paul's letter to Galatians. And Paul points out that the gifts of the Spirit, the peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, humility, self-control. And we talk about that. And what's your reaction to that? How do you react to the gifts of the Spirit? Are you aware of them? Do you receive them? So that's a kind of a follow-up at the end of the process. So anyway, we end up on Sunday afternoon with the renewal of vows. Oh gosh, I go backwards. No, that's not one. Oh yeah, and Paul's letter to the Corinthians, chapter 13 on love. I mean, you all know this chapter. I'm sure you've heard it many times. Anyway, we covered that, and then there's a wrap up with the sharing of the couples have an opportunity. There's no requirement. You're just given that opportunity that if anybody wants to get up and say a few words, we encourage that, because a lot of times when you get to that point in the marriage encounter experience, you're just you're overflowing with ideas and thoughts and feelings, and you want to share them. We give those people a chance, not too long, but a chance to do that. Okay, that's that's what the weekend is. And we've already had some questions. If there's any other questions,
Great program.
Right.
Do you, it's a sensitive subject, but are there situations where a couple becomes alienated as a result of this encounter? Or
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
does the couple, as they're answering these questions and writing these things down, do they become alienated and then they were reconcile? I mean, how do you manage the emotions that are flowing back and forth?
Well, there's no set answer for that. You know, a lot of times the faith leader can step in and negotiate the disagreements if there's a disagreement, if there's an issue that we can resolve. I mean, the couples have to work those things out among themselves. We can support them, we can give them suggestions, but there isn't an answer. You got to figure that one out for yourself. It happens, but mostly most of the couples can pretty well deal with it. You know, we give them the tools to deal with it. They can understand and come to an agreement and come to some kind of understanding on it. I just wanted to point out there's a couple of things up here. This is the plaque that Linda and I received at the end of our service on the national board. And that's a picture from one of the conferences that we sponsored. It was called the Building Bridges Conference in Allentown College. We tend to have the national meetings at college or university because we can hire, you know, we can get a dormitory setting, you know, for the participants to stay at, and they have the meeting rooms and auditoriums that we can use. Gabriel Calvo is done. He's now in this country, and he has given many talks at our conferences. We even had the pleasure of having him stay at our house at one point. So he's a really wonderful guy. Okay.
Quick question. How large are the groups? Are they small, intimate groups, or are they large groups?
Which group are you?
For the encounter.
For the typical weekend group.
Yeah.
8 or 10 couples would be typical. We might have fewer or more, but that would be typical.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, we went to marriage encounter in 1975, and you're probably familiar with it. It was a friary in Easton.
Yep. Yes.
That's where we went. Then when we came back here to where we live, we got together with about 5 couples every Sunday night. And we would do, it was called the 10 and 10.
Yep.
And we did the writing and you know, we'd go to different areas of the couple's homes where we were meeting and so forth. But what I wanted to say was, and not to put a damper on this, but out of the 5 couples that we met with on Sunday nights, only 2 couples stayed together. The other 3 couples divorced. And from the one couple, the woman and the man from the other couple were, you know, having an affair, and nobody knew it.
Well, you know, that happens.
Yeah.
I guess that's life.
That's life. Yeah.
Marriage gathering doesn't solve the problems. The couples themselves have to solve their problems.
Yeah.
But we give a way to, you know, to deal with it.
Give them the tools.
But what I wanted to say also about that was after the encounter weekend, you get together with other couples on a regular basis. Yeah. In our case, it was every Sunday night. We would get together at one of the 5 homes and have refreshments, and you know, it was a nice gathering.
Sure.
Until, you know, then we started breaking apart because of couples splitting up, you know, for whatever reason.
So has there been any opportunity here at Westminster for couples that may be having issues. Because I was sitting here trying to think, is there a resource here?
I am not aware of anything, and I would be delighted if there were something like that. I mean, we would have been very interested to participate. Now that I'm not married any longer, I'm not sure how I could fit in, but I'd be happy to help however I could.
Right. I mean, I know there's singles clubs, but that's a little bit too late.
Yeah, that's probably too late, but
But it seems unusual that you would have a church body without any.
I think we do. I can't remember what it's called, but there is a group that meets. At least it was here. I'm not sure if it kept restarted after COVID years.
Yeah, maybe I'll talk to Ann Hatfield
Yeah.
see if there's. And when I circulate,
But it was anonymous.
Yeah. When I circulate your talk, if there is a resource there, maybe it would be good if I circulate it. Not that my marriage isn't, I don't think everybody's looking at me kind of.
Can you discuss that?
Like ours.
Yeah, that's getting uncomfortable.
You were asking for a friend.
Yeah.
I think the marriage encounter weekend, at least my perspective of it, was not so much, I may be wrong, but my impression was not so much for couples that were struggling, but for couples to work together to strengthen the existing marriage on here's some ways to maybe more effectively communicate. We all go through rough patches of differences of how things are treated and looked at, and it just gives a different a group type of setting of, hey, these are communication vehicles, methods that you can use to better communicate with each other when those rough periods happen, and how you maintain the joy in the periods when nothing's rough and you just want to maintain happiness. Is not a group to resolve issues. Is that
that's
fair?
absolutely correct.
Okay, that was my impression of the marriage encounter. It was a strengthening mechanism, not a problem resolution session. Totally different.
Well, there's a huge emphasis on communication.
Yes.
And the 10 and 10, the 10 minutes of writing, and then the 10 minutes of talking about what you wrote.
Those are key.
Yeah, that's key to the whole weekend.
Yeah.
I found that the most challenging part because I'm very concise in my writing. I could never write a 300-page novel. It would be about 3 pages.
My problem too.
I have a book that kind of shed a little bit of light on marriage for me. God created marriage not to make us happier, but to make us more soulful.
Okay, that's interesting.
It's sometimes our partner is supposed to make us happy. That's their responsibility.
Yeah.
But and I think this came through with what you said, Sheldon, is look at the Bible verses and think about your soil and how open you are to the needs of your spouse.
Right.
And
Yeah, I think that those verses, the parable of the sower, at least until I heard it talked about in Marriage Encounter, is one that I look at, I'll say from a distance, as though I'm looking at something of how I grow my faith. On how because that's kind of how it's presented. But when you look at it in a personal one-on-one relationship side, how open am I to the communications that are going on or should be going on? Is it rocky? Thus, kind of the communications I'm receiving from my spouse just bounce off? Or am I the rich soil where maybe I haven't looked at it that way before? So it's a different perspective on how you use the parable. And I think the parable is there to help us, can help us in different regards.
Great, very good. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheldon.